Hello, everybody. It's John Schneider, and welcome to another episode of Jersey Bayshore Country. Perhaps you've seen this man before. He's my special guest, Al Salvalane. Hi, Al. Al has recently written a book on the shark attack, about the shark that swam up Matawan Creek and attacked some folks in Matawan about 100 years ago, 1916. Really interesting book. And there have been many books written about the shark attack, but this one looks at it from a different standpoint, doesn't it, Al?
Yes, it does.
Tell us about that.
Well, the other books about the shark attack, there are good books about the shark attack.
Oh, yeah.
And when I've been involved in studying about the shark attack, literally since the 1970s, where I really got into this. But most of the other books have dealt with the shark. What type of shark? Where did the shark go? How did this particular circumstance happen? My book was a little bit different in that I dealt with the human interest side of the story. When this happened in Matawan, July 12th, 1916, there were literally three shark attacks by the same shark, which is extremely unusual in shark activity and shark studies. And in many ways, this incident back in 1916 was kind of like Matawan's 9/11. In that it completely devastated the town. Stanley Fisher was one of the most popular people in town. Very, very, very athletic. He was a soloist, a singer. Everybody in town liked this man. And the women liked him too. He was a very good-looking guy.
Is his tailor shop still there?
Yes,
it still stands?
It's a barber shop right now. It's 137 Main Street.
Son
it's
of
a
a
barber
gun.
shop, but it's still there.
Okay.
And his house on 4 Fountain Avenue is still there, that he lived in 1916 when he died. And Lester Stilwell was a young boy, and he was attacked first. He was 11 years old. Stanley knew Lester. In fact, Stanley was very involved in the YMCA movement and the Boy Scouts. He knew Lester. Often he'd play ball with the boys. There were 6 boys involved in the shark attack. Lester was the youngest boy, and he's the one that died at the shark attack. But he was like the star athlete in town, and he was like the Mickey Mantle, or the Brady today.
Everybody loved this guy. Now he wasn't.
Exactly.
Was he a particularly good salesperson or a tailor?
Yes,
He was. Okay.
He was very outgoing. In fact, from the time he was a little boy, he actually went to Glenwood Institute, with the buildings are still there in Matawan. And he went to the Glenwood Institute, later went to Matawan High School, then went to the Freehold Military School, and then actually, for a while, went to Minnesota and was living with his sister to learn the dry cleaning trade. Then he came back and opened his own dry cleaning store, and also he became a tailor and was involved in selling men's suits. And he could sell you anything. He was very down to earth, and everybody liked him. And so if you walked into his shop without buying a suit, it's amazing, because he was just so good at what he did. And he was the one in town that everyone looked up to. And when this incident happened with Lester, Lester was attacked by the shark, and at first there were the other boys swimming with him. All of them were swimming in the nude, skinny dipping, down by the old Wyckoff Dock, which is like right at the base of Dock Street in Matawan.
And the pilings are still there.
The few pilings are there, but it's pretty much gone. The rest of it's gone. A few pilings, if you really search around in there. Some of the pilings there are not part of the Wyckoff Dock. There were other docks down there too. But the area is down there. We have a monument in Memorial Park to the shark attack. There's also a monument down near Dock Street showing the area where this took place. But the boys actually, once Lester was attacked in fact, at first they didn't really realize what it was. Some of the boys saw it looked like a submerged log moving toward Lester. And then all of a sudden Lester went down, hollering and screaming. And then he came up in the water, there's blood all over the place, because the shark attacked him in his midsection. And there were arteries and everything like that. It was a horrendous attack. And the boys saw that what happened, and they're kind of hypnotized by this. And then a few minutes later, Lester goes down and doesn't come back. He stays down. There's blood all over the place. And now they realize they've got to get help. So they run out of the water, swim back to Wyckoff Dock. They forget to put their clothes on, and they start running up Dock Street to Main Street. And they get to Main Street, they hang a right, and you see that it's right near the train station. They start running all the way up to the center of town. It's about 3/4 of a mile, and they're running like this. And Main Street at that time wasn't paved. It's dusty, and there's a streetcar track running up to Main Street. And the boys are hollering and screaming, "A shark got Lester! A shark got Lester! Lester's gone!" And these people look at these nude boys running uptown, and they don't know what to make of this.
And probably don't necessarily believe them because boys can be mischievous.
Captain Cottrell, who was living in, he was born in Matawan, but lived in...
Related to Captain Cottrell?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Captain Cottrell actually saw what happened. He walked across the drawbridge going over Matawan Creek. And now it's all kind of construction down there now. You can't.
But the Keyport section.
The Keyport section.
Sure.
And he saw the shark. He was a sea captain, and he knew what he saw. It was an 8-foot shark coming up Matawan Creek.
Yeah, but he was a drinker, wasn't he?
Not really.
And didn't he report to the local police?
Yes.
And they didn't
but
believe him.
they didn't do anything, but he wasn't drunk at the time. This
He
happened
wasn't,
early
right.
in the day.
Okay.
He may have been imbibed. He was not known for being a drunk or anything like that. He was known for being a storyteller.
Oh, I see.
So a lot of people, he would talk about, spin a yarn, and someone couldn't tell whether it's a yarn or something true. He actually goes down to the gatekeeper's shack at the trolley bridge, or the cross bridge, and he calls the town marshal, who also, his name is John Malsoff. He's also the town barber. And he says there's a shark heading, I just saw a shark going underneath the trolley bridge, headed toward Matawan. Everybody in the barber shop starts laughing because what, a shark coming to Matawan? There'd been a couple shark attacks, but this happened out on the open ocean.
Sure.
Beach Haven and Seabright.
It's like 10 miles up from the mouth of the
in Beach Haven and Spring Lake. Those attacks had happened. One happened on July 1st at Beach Haven. Another one happened on July 6th at Spring Lake, and then a little lull in between, and now this happens in Matawan. 3 shark attacks eventually are going to happen in one day. But at the first one, the first warning came through, nobody believed him. He actually jumps in the motorboat, heads up to town, and to tell the people forcefully now that there's a shark headed towards that. But by one of those quirky things, he crosses in front of the Wyckoff dock before the boys come down to go swimming. So now they come and they take their coats off, they're swimming, they're skinny dipping. He's trying to convince people uptown that a shark has come. The boys now, actually, Lester is attacked. He runs up, or they run uptown, and now they're looking at Captain Cottrell. There might be something to this. They're kind of taking him seriously now. Most of the people still aren't sure. But the boys run past Stanley's Tailor Shop, which is 137 Main Street. Building's still there. It's a barber shop now. And they run inside right by the tailor shop, and they said, "Shark got Lester. Shark got Lester." And Stanley actually knew Lester. And he knew that Lester suffered from a form of epilepsy. Back in those days, they called it the shakes. All of a sudden, you have an epileptic seizure. And it's one thing. I was a first aider at one time, and the first aid treatment for an epileptic seizure is you try to make sure the person doesn't hurt themselves. Because you can injure yourself. You can fall down, you can hit your head, crack, and then you try to get medication for them. So it's one thing to have an epileptic seizure when you're on dry land.
Sure.
If you have an epileptic seizure in the water, now that can be very, very serious.
So this is what he's thinking.
That's what he's thinking. Oh my God, is that he knew Lester, and he knew that Lester had epilepsy. He knew he had seizures. I don't know whether he actually saw it before, but he knew he did have experiences like that. So he believes the boys. He turns around and he bumps into 2 of his friends, George Red Burlew, he's a chauffeur in town at that time, about Stanley's age. Stanley's 24 years old.
Now, is this the Burlew of today's Burlew?
Oh, yeah, the Burlew's all over the area.
Yep.
And the Burlew's, Red Burlew was Stanley's age. And he also bumps into Arthur Smith, who's a carpenter. He's a 51-year-old carpenter. And they decide to go down to the Wyckoff dock and see what happens. And they're still not so sure about the shark business, but something's happened. These boys are not going to be running, screaming about running in the nude uptown. So they head down to the Wyckoff dock. And at first they get to the Wyckoff dock. Other people are converging down there. And now when they get down to the Wyckoff dock, they realize that something terrible has happened. They see that now there's blood all over the place. And the boys are now starting to, what the boys said about a shark, maybe it actually did happen. And Lester is nowhere to be found. And it looks like either Lester has been attacked by the shark and killed, or he drowns. The shark, he had an epileptic seizure because of this. And he drowns.
And he could have hit his head or cut himself.
Whatever.
In blood,
and the main thing now is they want to recover Lester's body.
Sure.
But nowadays, we've got a kind of a differentiation, a rescue operation and a recovery operation. Now, in a rescue operation, there's still a chance of saving someone.
Sure.
So people take all kinds of chances, to try to save someone's life. I mentioned that in my book that it's still happening today where people take these type of chances. But there's also a differentiation now between what they call it now recovery operation, where they know someone has died. This happened after 9/11, where they're trying to recover bodies. And they don't want to take too many chances because they don't want any more people dying in a dangerous situation. It was dangerous after 9/11. And they were very careful because they were now recovering dead bodies. No one's going to make it. They're all gone now. But back in 1916, they didn't have that differentiation. They didn't think that way. All they knew was they wanted Lester back. Now, Lester might not be breathing anymore. He may be dead, but they wanted his body back.
Yeah.
It was called a good death.
Yeah.
And a lot of people died in those days when they were young, so that wasn't so unusual. But they always wanted to have a body that they could have. They could have a funeral. They could put flowers at the cemetery. And so these men now, at first, when they went out there, they were probing with long poles. They were doing the correct thing. But they were afraid now that the shark might take his body back out to Raritan Bay, head back out to Raritan Bay. So now the people are saying, whatever you do, don't go in the water. But they're looking at these men, and they can kind of read what they're thinking. And they're saying, don't do this. Don't do this. And now these men put on swimming trunks. And now they start diving down to the bottom of Matawan Creek. Now, high tide had come in, which means that Matawan Creek was almost 20 feet deep at that time. So
As opposed to today, which is what?
now, which is...
Couple of feet.
Couple of feet, because when they built the dam to make Lake Lefferts in 1929, the depth went down.
Yeah.
And they don't dredge it at all. And there's nothing compared to the depth of Matawan Creek back in those days. You could still drown in Matawan Creek if you're not careful and you slip in and hit your head.
Sure.
But it's nothing compared to what Matawan Creek was like a tidal river,
Yeah.
an estuary back in those days. And now they were diving all the way down. They didn't have scuba gear or anything like that. And they were diving, take a deep breath, and they go around to feel around. And they were doing this. And finally, Stanley goes down on one of his last dives because these men are exhausted. They want to take a break.
Sure.
And he finds something at the bottom. But he realizes it's Lester's body. But Lester's body isn't alone down there.
Oh.
And he starts bringing Lester up. And on his way up, he's attacked by the shark.
Oh.
It's an 8-foot shark now attacks Stanley.
8 feet?
About 8 feet long. Captain Cottrell actually saw the shark. It was between 7.5, 8.
Could they
feet.
identify the variety or the
At
breed?
that time, not really. Later, it was identified as the one. There was a shark killed a juvenile great white, and some people might say, well, maybe that wasn't the shark. Maybe that shark got away forever. It's still.
And
up
some
in the air.
people say bull shark because they tend to favor sometimes
Exactly.
fresh waters.
Well, they were thinking that a bull shark is able to make the transition from saltwater to fresh water.
Brackish.
But great whites are primarily they're saltwater creatures, so they would stay out there. But a lot of people don't realize that Matawan Creek in those days was like a tidal river, 20 feet deep at high tide. And so there's a lot of salt water coming in with high tide.
I see.
So then it's not that
Or
far.
at the very least brackish.
Yeah, this was only 1.5 miles from Raritan Bay.
Right,
So it's not like way up the river. It's just
Right.
only 1.5 miles.
A shark could swim from the mouth of Matawan Creek to the point where it killed the people in probably about 5 or 6 minutes.
Sure.
I think. Yeah.
And then it could, which actually happened, turned around, started heading back. Where that's one sign that it probably was a juvenile great white, because if it were a bull shark, it probably would have continued the other direction, heading towards fresh water. And a lot of people, when Stanley was attacked, there were people watching this, about 300 people, and he's a big man. He's 6'1", 210 pounds, and if anybody could fight the shark, Stanley Fish, he's one of the toughest guys in Matawan, one of the strongest men in Matawan. He's fighting.
It's just a big fish.
For his life, he's
Yeah.
fighting. He's punching the shark. He's kicking the shark. He's trying to make, and the shark has latched onto his leg, and it's actually latched onto his leg. This is shark, and he's losing a lot of blood. And there's some other men in a rowboat. There's a county detective there, and Stanley says, "Yeah, help me." And they kind of will come over, and they're hitting the shark with an oar, and Stanley's punching the shark, and finally the shark releases Stanley. And in the meantime, Stanley had Lester under his arm. And when Stanley was attacked, Lester slipped away, back down to the bottom of Matawan Creek. And Stanley is just fighting for his life to get in. And they bring him on shore. And first of all, his leg and arteries are severed. And you know what happens with arterial bleeding? It's like a geyser going up in the air like an oil
I had one on my foot.
And people see that,
Yeah.
a stream of water
Yeah.
or a stream of blood going up in the air, and women are fainting left and right.
Yeah.
And Stanley, first of all, was kind of fighting on adrenaline. A lot of the nerve tissue had been damaged, so he didn't feel as much pain.
Yeah.
And he looks down his grave, his words come out of his mouth. It's in the Matawan Journal. He said, "Oh my God," he sees his leg. And he's brought up on shore, and they try to locate a doctor. Dr. George Reynolds comes down, one of Stanley's best friends, who's helping him in the tailor shop. His name was Willie Shepard. He's there with Stanley, and he's trying to calm Stanley down. And Stanley sees what happens, and Willie, he basically tells Willie, if anything happens to me, take care of my sister. His sister's Augusta Fisher. She's married at the time, but Stanley was very much like a Victorian man. So, if he can't take care of his sister, he wants one of his best friends, Willie Shepard, and Willie's nodding and said, I'll take care of him. And they kind of take Stanley up to, and they put a tourniquet, there are 2 tourniquets burst on him, and they're trying to take him up to the Matawan train station. They got a choice. They could either try to take him up to St. Peter's Hospital, New Brunswick, which is, they're going over unpaved roads that are bumpy.
Yeah.
Stanley probably won't make it out of town before he dies. Or they could put him on the train. The train station is close by. They'll take him by train down to Monmouth Memorial, a long
Well, do the trains run that often back on
Well,
those?
right, yeah. The next train was coming at 5:06. He was attacked at 4 o'clock. And when they finally were getting him up, the next train is 5:06. And they take him to the train station. Here's something I found out that it was new information. That I talked to some people when we were doing the shark attack event who were from relatives of Arthur Smith. And they said that when Stanley was attacked and they were carrying him up, and different relatives said, our family has talked about this for years, that Stanley was singing. Remember, he was a tenor in the choir.
Right.
The whole town of Matawan could hear him when they opened the
My
windows.
gosh, my
And
gosh.
he's singing, "Nearer, my God, to Thee,"
Oh, my
as they're
gosh.
carrying him to
Oh,
this.
God, how sad.
And the amazing thing is, we did a cemetery event right at the time of the shark attack, when it happened.
Rose Hill Cemetery.
Rose Hill. And I was I'm a singer. And it's ironic that Stanley's biographer happens to be a singer who does a biography of him. And at different times I would kind of latch on to Stanley's songs. And I was going to sing a song earlier on about Safe in the Arms of Jesus. That was sung first, when Lester was being buried. And all of a sudden I had a feeling over me. Change this to Nearer, my God, to Thee. And I can't, for the life of me, figure out why I changed the song to Nearer, my God, to Thee, because I wasn't planning on doing it. But this feeling kept coming over me, and that's one of the songs that I plan to have played at my funeral. It's one of my favorite songs. In fact, a lot of people at the sinking of the Titanic, claim that they heard the bandsman playing "Nearer, My God, to Thee." Other people claim it was a different song, but whatever. It's a great story anyway. But it was one of my favorite songs. But it wasn't what I planned to do, and I didn't associate it with the shark attack. Titanic, yes, not the shark attack. But I decided, for some reason, I'd had while I was writing the book, a lot of times I'd go to near Stanley's grave, and I'd kind of meditate, and I'd sit out there taking notes while I'm writing my book, right by Stanley Fisher's grave. And this was one feeling that came over me that I had before, and that to change it to Nearer, my God, to Thee. So I sang Nearer, my God, to Thee at that time.
In the cemetery.
In the cemetery. I didn't know what happened. Later I found
Sure.
out from relatives of Arthur Smith after the fact, because this happened on July 12th, but
So wait a minute. You sang this song at Stanley Fisher's by his grave, but you didn't know that's what he sang.
No, I didn't.
So later on,
I
his
found
relatives
out a few
found
days
it.
later
Oh my gosh!
that's what he sang. And he was a soloist. And when you're suffering and you're scared, often you do what you're comfortable doing. So one thing that Stanley would be comfortable doing, to be singing. Other people might do other things. They might do this or that. But he started to sing when he was scared.
I do
Now,
the same thing.
He's on his death's door, he thinks.
Yeah, no, I know. It's
And
a
he starts
distraction.
singing
It's
that.
a distraction.
And I still have that feeling that Stanley was giving me a signal.
Now they got him on the train,
Yeah.
and he bled to death on the train, or no?
He made it all the way to Long Branch, which was still a miracle. He's losing all kind of blood. And they try to stabilize him before they actually take him in to surgery.
Yeah.
And right before they're going to take him to surgery, he motions to, his name was Dr. Field, he's the attending surgeon. He wants to say something. And Stanley just has he can get a few words out of his mouth. And he says to Dr. Fields, "I got Lester away from the shark. I did my duty." And then he dies right then.
Yeah.
Those are his last words. Last words out of his mouth weren't about himself. Or, oh boy, how I was worked out of the rest of my life.
Yeah.
It's, "I got Lester away from the shark."
This book is not so much about the shark, but about the people in the town of Matawan and around the people who tried to save the young boy. And it's a very interesting read. And this can be purchased. You could go to Amazon.com.
Well, you can, probably the easiest way is go straight to the Matawan Historical Society, to our website, and they're on through the email, and just let us know that you'd like a book. Any money that I derive from this is donated 100% to the Matawan Historical Society. I made up my mind. I'm not making one penny off of this book. I love history, and the best way I could dedicate it would be to let proceeds go to help history.
Now let's stay focused on, because we're going to talk about a couple of different things here that are all interrelated, and it all has to do with Matawan. Matawan Creek. Matawan Creek, for some period of time, was a major thoroughfare for steamships and other boats taking passengers to the wonderful town of Matawan. What was that like? When was that period, and what was the town like?
During the 18th century, Matawan Creek had the name Matawan Creek, but the town had a different name. It was called Middletown Point. And the reason they called it Middletown Point is because it was the shipping point of Monmouth County. Matawan Creek in those days was still almost 20 feet deep, and there were a lot of wharfs along Matawan Creek, and people would bring their produce, and we had grist mills, and they would, in fact, John Burroughs, for the Burroughs Mansion, was very active at that time during the American Revolution. He had 2 grist mills, and they had warehouses. They'd load produce and ground up grain to put on actual ships. These are ocean-going sloops and schooners. They'd go up Matawan Creek and go up the coast, up to ports north of Matawan, also down to Charleston and Savannah, taking produce. So Matawan really was a port at that time.
The Matawan Creek, you mentioned, is technically an estuary, as is the Navesink River. It's also an estuary, a tidal estuary. What can you tell us about Lake Lefferts? When I do research on Lake Lefferts, I don't see much. I don't see pictures. I mean, was it a beautiful valley? Okay. Why was it dammed? And
well, it's funny. Whenever I do different talks on the shark attack, because Lake Lefferts was actually formed after the shark attack. A lot of people say, did they do that because they didn't want sharks coming down in Matawan anymore to Lower Lefferts? And I smile and I say, well, no.
Yeah.
They did it for money.
Well, because Matawan Creek, just on the other side of the dam, is literally either there's no water or it's inches.
Well, the decision was made, they wanted to develop the land by damming Matawan Creek and making a lake in 1929 when they dammed Lake Lefferts. And the reason was to enhance property value.
And Lake Lefferts is named after?
Jacob Lefferts. Now, Jacob Lefferts, after Stanley Fisher died, the shark attack wasn't over.
See how these are all interrelated stories?
He actually was on the train, waiting up at the train station for the 506 train. The shark was heading back toward Raritan Bay after the attack on Stanley Fisher. There were another group of boys swimming. It was two boys from New York City, Joseph Dunn and his brother. Joseph was 12 years old.
In the Keyport area, right?
Yes, Michael was 14 years old. And the aunt of their aunt lived in Cliffwood, actually. Cliffwood. And they would come down to visit their aunt in Cliffwood, and they would go swimming with a friend from Matawan. His name was Jerry Hoorahan. And so Jerry Hoorahan, the 2 Dunn boys, would go swimming at the New Jersey Clay Company Brickyard Dock.
Which was right where Route 35 crosses Matawan Creek.
And
there was a pier that came, and they would swim off that pier and dive.
They would swim off the Brickyard Dock, and it's about a half mile away from the Wyckoff Dock. So all this was going on at the Wyckoff Dock about the shark and people down there, Stanley Fisher, and trying to recover everything and take the Stanley. Boys didn't know anything until Captain Cottrell. I call Captain Cottrell in my book. I call Captain Cottrell the Paul Revere of the Matawan
Yeah,
shark attack.
the shark is coming. The
Because
shark is coming.
At first, he was telling people that the shark is going the other way
Right.
to Matawan. Nobody believes him, and he passes by the Wyckoff dock before the boys get to warn him.
Right.
And then he's coming the other way.
Yeah.
He's heading back towards Keyport.
Yeah.
And as he's heading back towards Keyport, he's crying. Well, a shark got boys, got Lester and Stanley. Get out of the water! And he sees the boys there, and Jacob Lefferts is also in that area. And so when the boys hear from Captain Cottrell and Jacob Lefferts get out of the water, they start swimming up out of the water. Jerry Hooring gets out first, then Michael Dunn, who's the older boy, gets out. The last person to get out is the young boy, Joseph Dunn. He's getting out of the water. The shark latches on to Joseph's leg
Bites him.
and actually pulls him back into the deep part of Matawan Creek.
Mm-hmm.
And these two boys are very, very brave. They see the shark. The shark is pulling Joseph back. They jump back in the water.
Wow.
And it's like a tug of war.
Oh, my
The boys are pulling Joseph one way. The shark is pulling Joseph the other way.
Yeah.
Jacob left. Here's a joke, because whenever I do talks on the Matawan shark attack, I get a laugh. And I let them laugh, and then I settle them down. Because Jacob Lefferts is a Matawan lawyer. And the Matawan lawyer jumps in the water, and he's fighting the shark and pulling the boy away from the shark. Everybody laughs
It's
because
a shark fighting a shark.
a shark fighting a shark. And I say, okay, you can have your laugh, but now realize that these boys and Joseph Dunn Jacob Lefferts were risking their lives.
Yeah.
They could see the shark.
Yeah.
The shark could let go of Joseph and attack them at the same time.
Scary.
So these were men that were risking their lives. These two teenage boys and Jacob Lefferts, and they were able to get Joseph away from the shark.
Yeah.
Because if they hadn't shown that courage, he would have been the third victim
Yep.
of the shark
Yep,
attack.
that's
He
right.
would have died too.
That's right.
And his wounds were severe enough. They did take him eventually to St. Peter's Hospital. He was in the hospital for 2 months. And so it wasn't exactly a simple cakewalk to get him away.
And do try to look for this book. It's really fantastic. Stanley Fisher, Shark Attack Hero of a Bygone Age. It's not just about the shark attack.
No.
It's about life that surrounded the shark attack at the time, and a lot of stuff you probably didn't know or that we didn't talk about.
It's about people.
Yeah.
That's what history
That's
really
what
is
history
about.
is all about. It helps us understand who we are, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Anyway, that's it for our show. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm John Schneider, your host. We do this show every week. You can watch past episodes and current episodes too at jerseybayshore.com. And you can also go to Jersey Bayshore Country on Facebook and watch episodes. And if you have any ideas, contact me. Let me know things you'd like to see in the future. And you know what I always say, do I really have to say it? If you see me out there walking around, having lunch, having dinner, I could be in a movie theater, tap me on the shoulder and say hello, introduce yourself, because nothing is more important than meeting you. So long, everybody.
Thank you.